Caution. This case is unlike anything you've heard before. A story so dark, so disturbing, and so incomprehensible that it will make you question humanity itself. Stay with me until the very end of this true crime documentary, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. And before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community where we uncover real-life mysteries and the darkest stories the world has ever known. On a cold evening in late November of 2014, in a small and seemingly quiet town tucked away in the American Midwest, a case began to unfold that would forever haunt the people who lived there and shock true crime enthusiasts worldwide. The victim was a woman named Emily Carter, just 32 years old, a schoolteacher described by her colleagues as patient, compassionate, and deeply devoted to her students. To her neighbors, Emily was that person who always waved when she passed by, who baked cookies during Christmas for the kids next door, and who never seemed to have a cruel word for anyone. But behind her warm smile, Emily carried a loneliness she rarely admitted to others. After a painful divorce 2 years prior, she lived alone in a modest rental home on the edge of town. She had no children, and aside from a few friends and coworkers, her social circle was limited. No one could have guessed that this isolation would make her the perfect target for a predator who had already been watching. The man later identified as her killer was 41-year-old Daniel Reeves. Daniel was not a stranger in town. He grew up there, went to school there, and yet to most people, he remained invisible. He had always been quiet, awkward, and described as different. He worked odd jobs, never kept long-term employment, and lived with his elderly mother in a deteriorating farmhouse outside of town. His father had left when he was only 10, and rumors swirled for years about physical abuse in the home. What no one in the community could see was the darkness festering inside him, a disturbing combination of resentment, rage, and obsession with women who rejected him. He spent countless hours online in twisted chat rooms, venting his hatred for women, consuming violent material, and posting anonymously about fantasies that in hindsight were chillingly close to what he would eventually carry out. The events began with something as seemingly harmless as Daniel noticing Emily at the local grocery store. She smiled politely when he held the door open for her, a simple human gesture. But to him, it was everything. That small smile planted an idea in his disturbed mind, that Emily was someone he could claim, someone who owed him attention. For weeks, Daniel followed her without her knowing. He sat in his car outside her school, watched her come home from work, and even learned her schedule. He knew what time she left in the morning, what time she walked her dog, and when she usually turned her lights off at night. He began writing about her in his journal, referring to her as my angel and my redemption, but at the same time, his writings showed resentment toward her for living what he saw as a better life than his. This obsession spiraled until one night it turned deadly. On November 29, Emily's best friend, Sarah, grew worried when she didn't respond to calls and failed to show up to a Saturday brunch they had planned. It wasn't like Emily to disappear without notice. By late afternoon, Sarah drove to Emily's home. The front door was slightly ajar, which immediately sent chills through her. Inside, nothing looked immediately wrong. The lights were on, her purse sat on the counter, but the silence was unbearable. Sarah called Emily's name but received no answer. She then noticed something that would stay burned into her memory forever, a small trail of red smeared across the hardwood floor, leading down the hallway. She called 911 instantly, her hands shaking as she tried to explain the scene to the dispatcher. Police arrived quickly, and within minutes, the quiet home turned into a nightmare crime scene. Emily's body was found in her bedroom. She had been brutally assaulted and murdered in an act of violence so shocking that even seasoned investigators later admitted it was one of the worst scenes they had ever witnessed. The brutality suggested personal rage, not a random break-in. Detectives immediately began piecing together Emily's last hours, interviewing neighbors, checking surveillance cameras from nearby businesses, and combing through her phone and social media. What emerged was deeply unsettling. Several neighbors had noticed a strange car parked down the block in the evenings, a beat-up sedan that seemed out of place. One woman even recalled seeing it there several nights in a row, but she never thought to report it. Police traced that car to Daniel Reeves. When officers visited his home, they found him sitting in the living room as though nothing had happened, but his nervous demeanor gave him away. His mother, frail and nearly blind, told detectives that her son often disappeared for hours at night. A search warrant revealed journals filled with chilling entries about Emily, describing how he followed her, what she wore, and how he felt rejected when she never paid him the attention he deserved. The trial that followed was one of the most emotional the community had ever seen. The prosecution laid out the disturbing pattern: a man filled with resentment and hatred, who stalked an innocent woman and finally unleashed his fury on her in a way that defied human understanding. The defense attempted to argue insanity, pointing to his troubled childhood and mental illness, but the jury saw through it. The details of Emily's final hours were so harrowing that several jurors cried openly in court. After just 3 hours of deliberation, Daniel Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But the story doesn't end there. For Emily's family and friends, the trial was only one piece of the trauma. The impact rippled through the community. Her students at the elementary school were devastated. Counselors had to be brought in to comfort the children who couldn't understand why their kind teacher wasn't coming back. Sarah, her best friend, fell into a deep depression, struggling with guilt for not recognizing the signs sooner, though there was nothing she could have done. Parents in town grew fearful, warning their daughters never to go anywhere alone. A sense of innocence was shattered. What makes this case so haunting, and why it continues to circulate in true crime communities online, is the way it exposes the darkest corners of human obsession. This was not a random act of violence. It was calculated, deliberate, and the result of years of resentment building up in a man who felt invisible. The question people kept asking themselves was, could this have been prevented? Could someone have seen the warning signs in Daniel's disturbing online posts? Should the neighbors have reported the strange car outside Emily's house? These what-ifs continue to torment those connected to the case. In interviews after the trial, investigators admitted they too were haunted by it. One detective said, "I've seen a lot in my career, but this case made me question humanity itself. The level of obsession and brutality, it's something you can't unsee." Even journalists covering the trial said the atmosphere in the courtroom felt heavy, like the air itself was burdened by the horror of what had been done to Emily. As years have passed, Emily's family has worked to honor her memory by starting a foundation in her name, raising awareness about stalking, domestic violence, and the dangers of ignoring red flags. Her mother, in a heartbreaking interview, said, "If one person can be saved by learning from what happened to Emily, then at least some good can come from our tragedy." Her words are a reminder that behind every true crime case is not just a shocking headline but real lives, real pain, and real people left behind. And that is why this story resonates so deeply. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, about the monsters that can exist behind ordinary faces, and about the fragility of safety in a world where darkness often hides in plain sight. If this case disturbed you as much as it disturbed me, then let Emily's story be more than just another headline. Share this video so more people can learn the warning signs of obsession before it turns into tragedy. Comment below your thoughts. Do you believe justice was truly served in this case? And most importantly, if you aren't already, subscribe right now and join our community as we uncover the darkest, most chilling true crime cases the world has ever seen. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never forget, evil often hides in the most ordinary places.